All right, St. Louis, I'd like to say good morning to all. Quite sure many are celebrating Easter on this morning. We're going to go a little deep today, St. Louis. I think it's imperative that we go deep. But before we go to that level of understanding, I think you all need to understand that without strengthening your mind, you're not going to be able to come to the conclusion that you never understood because you have not the power to acknowledge that you don't understand. In other words, those that are considered to be our teachers and educators and leaders are no different than those that in which they are teaching. They're blind, unfortunately. Illiterate, however you want to put it, not to be insulting, but they lack the knowledge. And the reason they lack the knowledge is because they haven't reached the perfected state of mind. Think for a second. If we have cavemen, Neanderthals, that came before us that were primitive in mind, no different than savages. They went and had children, had sex, did the things that we're doing right now. They killed one another, acted a fool, and then came us. The only thing we're doing different is that we have technology. So it makes it appear as though we're more advanced than the Neanderthals or cavemen. The question we must ask ourselves, are we more advanced? Being that we have created technology, semiconductors, transistors, we're able to establish or understand how supposedly the planets work. We can also diagnose different diseases because of the different scans that we have to be able to detect. But what happens if we never was infected by the disease from the beginning? We wouldn't have to create the technology in which we're creating. So that clearly tells me, is it possible that we're going the wrong way? So as a result, the technology in which we're creating can detect something within the system that's a part of the enclosed system. In other words, cause and effect, conservation of energy. There's a beginning and there's an ending. So as a result, I can create technology to allow me to see deeper in the system in which I'm in. But what if we're in the wrong system? What if we are in the wrong system? And the reason we're in the wrong system is due to our undeveloped mind. In other words, the mind must change our system. But what happens if the mind never reached the level of development to change our system? So as a result, we're looking through the glass darkly. We can't see. What if we don't know that we can't see? So what we see becomes our reality. And we build everything within that reality. And that reality is a closed system that becomes our home. So that tells me within that system, you're going to access hallucinations. You're going to access things that are untrue. You're going to formulate false religion, fables and stories, but you're not going to know they're fables and stories because you hallucinate. You're hallucinating and you don't know it. So the hallucinations keep you trapped in the system. So that tells me what happens if we reach a perfected mind. Mind is friction and heat. We would leave the system, and as a result, we will stop the hallucinations and we will start building things differently because we would have the capacity of mind to build in a different level, in a different method, in a different way. So, as I said earlier, we begin to build technology where Neanderthals had not the capability of building. So we thought we were a little more intellectually astute than the Neanderthals. We got trains, planes, and cars, but the minerals that we're utilizing to create the power, the substances, is creating toxic. We're inhaling and breathing and touching things that are destroying us and causing us to have cancer and carcinogens, causing us to have high sugar levels. But what happens if we strengthen in mind before we start building the system? If we did that, the system would necessarily have the power over us, meaning that technology. Everyone's trying to go into space, colonize another planet. But what happens if everything in which we're trying to colonize is in our mind? However, based on the hallucinations from the beginning of creation, we never knew it was in our mind because we were losing our mind from the beginning of creation. We were perishing. You were losing your mind. You gain the whole world, but you lose your mind. So in essence, what I'm saying is, as a result of losing your mind, you become susceptible to sickness and disease, heart attacks, strokes, diabetes, cancer, lupus, all kinds of infirmities, coronaviruses, black plagues. We've been going through this since the world was created. Have you ever understand and acknowledged and asked yourself why? Is it possible that the cavemen that were once savages had never reached a developed mind to go back the other way? And yet we followed the same way as the savages, but yet we created more toys, and yet we consumed ourselves with the affairs of the world, and yet we became profitable. And yes, we came up with false religion and false doctrine. Now we're under the assumption and saying, okay, based on the resurrection of Jesus Christ, resurrecting, we're free. Have you ever thought that that's a parable and an allegory? Have you ever thought about how can you place a man, a human, on a cross, put him in a tomb, and subsequently he comes out of the tomb? Think about yourself as being human. You think we can place you on the cross and put you in a tomb and subsequently you're going to come out? If that's the case, you're living in darkness. Because if you're being placed on something and you put in something, that's not what that's saying. That's saying that technically each living organism is on a cross. And as a result of being on the cross, which is not a literal cross, you're in darkness. Your mind is hallucinating. So you have not the power to break yourself down from the cross and come out of the grave. Technically, you are Christ that's on the cross. You must manifest a perfect sound and a perfect mind that will literally take you off the cross, which will change your place in space and time and allow you to see the world as it truly is, because you now have the ability to reach the speed of light, which they consider to be 186,000 miles per second, 300,000 kilometers, but yet you don't quite understand it because your mind has been hallucinating since you were a child. No different than your teachers and their teachers, your pastors, CEOs, presidents, kings and queens are all hallucinating, and they're all going the wrong way towards the laws of thermodynamics. Entropy increases, chaos and disorder. We must come to the realization, if we're going to change society as it is, we must begin to understand all is not as it appears. We have wars and rumors of wars. We got Ukraine and Russia fighting. We had World War I, World War II, Vietnam, Korean War. We got nuclear power, etc. We're talking about nuclear proliferation, etc. The only way to stop darkness is for us to come down from the cross. And the cross is not literal. The cross is us reaching our perfected mind that will stop time. And at that point, you will remove your grave clothes and come out of the cave, and you will literally begin to see the world as it truly is. You are capable of becoming so intellectually astute, but yet you don't know. From Yale to Harvard to MIT to Princeton to Nobel laureates to PhDs, JDs, doctorate degrees, etc., are all considered to be educated fools. The reason they're educated fools is because they're living in a system in which they can't break free from unless they had the knowledge to break free from it. And once they gain the knowledge, they will then reach the speed of light. And as a result of reaching the speed, not a devil, not darkness, not an hallucination in the world can stop such power. You must begin to understand that we are dying because we have not reached perfection. We've been following deities, Muslims against Christians, Buddhists, Hinduism. You are capable of becoming one with the truth, but you must become that truth. Because if you don't, you're going to continue to decay. and your cells are going to continue to mutate, and they're going to continue to place you in the ground, which is not a ground, it's a sound. And once you reach that level of understanding, not a devil in hell can come up against such power. That's what they call antimatter, which will annihilate matter upon impact. I'm trying my best to get you to understand this. We must stop following these fables and stories and following these pastors and bishops that unfortunately have been deceived themselves, and they're decaying. Alzheimer's, dementia is gripping their souls. So in other words, if you were preaching truth, why are you dying of Alzheimer's and dementia? You would become spirit instead of decaying. Think about it. Your pastors 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years ago are no longer here. Then their sons take over, then their sons, but everyone's decaying. That tells you all it's not as it appears. I know it's difficult for some of you to grasp, but trust me, I'm not afraid of any of you. Not you per se, but the darkness that dwells within most of you. It's darkness, straight darkness. It's not you. We fight not against flesh and blood. We fight against principalities and powers and rulers of darkness. And as a result, it's been controlling this world since we've known ourselves, and we turned the Bible and the fables and stories from Genesis to Revelation to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and it seared your consciousness, and as a result, you became a slave, and you remain on the cross, which is not a literal cross. Once you reach a certain perfected of mind, you will literally annihilate matter. And when they see you, they're seeing your Father, and you and the Father are one, and that's a perfected sound that will literally stop the laws of the universe, which is laws of thermodynamics, as we know the laws of the universe. I'm praying for you that you come to your understanding so you can eradicate the disease that's trying to take your body, take your mind, and destroy everything that you were created to become. It's time to wake up. It's time to come off that cross. It's time to be what you are capable of becoming. God bless.